Hey guys, this is Lewis here, and today I created this video specifically for the people who are newly getting into Formula One, hence the title name, What is Formula One? Formula One is seen by the pinnacle of motorsport by many who watch it, especially the Europeans, hence some of the F1 elitists that exist on Twitter. You might see under NASCAR or IndyCar threads. F1 is an spec series meaning that all 10 teams build their own car from scratch. They used to build off the previous design in like 2000s and the early 2000s and farther back, but now they just usually build the car from scratch again using the information that they had from last year's car. Some teams, like Aston Martin with Mercedes and Haas with Ferrari, buy parts from the factory teams like suspensions and gearboxes. So mainly the teams that use Mercedes and Ferrari engines do this. They can buy suspension and gearboxes from those factory teams, but they can't buy like the impact structure and the bodywork, which they have to build themselves. The 2022 cars, speaking of bodywork, use ground effect, which is a phenomenon that when used, sucks the card to the ground, which causes a bouncing type effect called porpoising. Now, the F1 cars by themselves bounce. You might see it towards the end of the straight if you look on like a 2019 clip of, I don't know, the SF90, the 2019 Ferrari. You might see at the very end of the straight before they start braking it start to bounce. It's just bouncing. That's not porpoising. Porpoising comes from the ground effect. So the current 2022 cars use 1.6 liter 90 degree V6 hybrid engines using E10 fuel that have a maximum of 15,000 RPMs, but most teams are around 12, 13,000. The hybrid system utilizes the MGUK, which is the motor generator unit kinetic, and the MGUH, the motor generator unit heat. The MGUK uses heat energy from braking, which is stored in the battery, which is used for the ERS system, which is the extra power that the engine produces. The MGU-H recovers power from within the turbo, and it can spin the compressor and it gets rid of turbo lag. That's why when you might see of an onboard of a pole lap, there's no spooling of the turbo because there's no turbo lag. It's like mixing a supercharger with a turbocharger. The ICE, the main power source. This is going to change in 2026, of course. I believe the MGUK is going to make about 4 to 500 horsepower, but the ICE, the internal combustion engine, makes most of the power with the turbocharger, which equates to about 850. All the teams make around the same, slightly over 1,000 horsepower, but obviously it's differing. With the ERS system covering about 160. F1, like I mentioned earlier, is getting rid of the MGU-H in the 2026 engine regulations, which are not too far away now that we think about it. F1 has four engine suppliers, which are Mercedes, Renault, Honda/Red Bull Powertrains. It's officially called Red Bull Powertrains, but they still use like people from Honda and all that, so it's like an iffy thing. And Ferrari. Red Bull and AlphaTauri use the Honda/Red Bull powertrain engines, as AlphaTauri is like the sister team. It's more of a, it was meant to be a junior team, but it's like a sister team now of Red Bull. Ferrari, Haas, and Alfa Romeo use the Ferrari engine. Mercedes, Williams, McLaren, and Aston Martin use the Mercedes engine, with only Alpine using the Renault engine. F1 currently has 10 teams, which I just listed, which are Ferrari, McLaren, Williams, Mercedes, Alpine, Red Bull, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Haas, and Aston Martin, with 20 drivers in total, as F1 only fields 2 cars per team, unlike IndyCar, NASCAR, WEC, kind of. Yeah. With Max Verstappen, and Sergio Perez at Red Bull, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz at Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell at Mercedes, Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren, Alexander Albon and Nicholas Latifi at Williams, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon at Alpine, Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou at Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo. I usually say Alfa Romeo, but I cannot speak today. Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly at AlphaTauri, Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen at Haas, and Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll at Aston Martin. Stefano Domenicali, you might hear his name out and about. The 2023 24 race schedule was just announced. Highest ever. We keep on going up. Because in 2040 we have 42 races on our hands. Ew. Feel bad for the mechanics. Anyway, moving on. Stefano, he is the CEO and president of the Formula One group, which owns Formula One, obviously. He was also the Ferrari team principal from 2008 to 2012. As a Ferrari fan, I should know this well, but he was the team principal when Ferrari won their last Constructors' World title in 2008. Now, let's go back in time to when F1 was in its infancy. F1 originated from the European Championship in the 1930s, but the first official race was the British Grand Prix, the Grand Prix of Europe on May 13th, 1950. Some of the royal family was present, like King George IV and Giuseppe slash Nina, as he would go by, Farina, won the Grand Prix, and he would later go on to win the first Formula One Drivers' World Championship ahead of Juan Manuel Fangio. Now, Alberto Ascari would win 1952 and 1953 in a Ferrari. Farina was in an Alfa Romeo, but Juan Manuel would go on to win in 1951, and he'd go 4 in a row from 1954 to 1957 to win a record-breaking 5 titles until Michael Schumacher broke that duct in 2003 when he won his 6th title and his 4th title with Ferrari. Michael Schumacher, obviously, he's the father of Mick Schumacher, and he is basically F1 royalty, as he's got 7 titles, 91 wins. Like I mentioned earlier, he was the first person to break Juan Manuel's record upon many other records, like Prost's record of winning 51 races. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it's 51. But and Senna had most poles, I believe, before. Michael got 65, and he got 91 wins, 7 titles. Yeah, very good stats. Only broken by Lewis Hamilton, who ties him on World Championships, has 103 wins, and I believe 100 poles. Crazy. Anyway, Vanwall won the first World Constructors' Championship in 1958. In 1958, the constructors were Maserati, Cooper, which had Climax engines, Ferrari, BRM, Connaught with Alta engines, Lotus, who had also had Climax engines, Vanwall, Osa, and Porsche. Now Osa was like the racing brand of Maserati until 1967 when the Maserati brothers shut it down. There's 20 teams in total, whether it be drivers fielding themselves, which would count as a team, or an actual team per se. Only 6 teams had factory support. So Ferrari, BRM, Cooper, Lotus, Vanwall, and Osa had support. Osa support coming from Maserati. Now, Formula One cars had front designed engines at the start. Obviously, we now know they are mid-engine cars, but at the start they were front-engine cars. The Bugatti tried the Type 251, which was created and finished in 1955 and ran in 1956, but it was unsuccessful. Jack Brabham in his mid-engine designed Cooper T51 in 1959 would prove everyone that mid-engine cars were the way to go, and he would win the title that year and go back to back by winning in 1960. By 1961, everyone had mid-engine cars. I will go deeper into the history of Formula One sometime. I'll make a video on it, but I've got other videos scheduled. Currently, if I continued with more history, this video would be a hell of a lot longer. Currently, when I'm making this video, which is the 23rd of September 2022, if you didn't look at the year of this video, watching it in the future. So the 2020 grid, Mercedes, Red Bull, AlphaTauri, and Ferrari are sticking with the same drivers. McLaren will keep Norris, but they'll bring in the Formula 2 champion of last year, Oscar Piastri, coming in as a rookie, as Lando's teammate, for the outgoing Daniel Ricciardo, who still does not have a seat. Alonso will replace the retiring and outgoing Sebastian Vettel at Aston Martin, partnering Lance Stroll. For Williams, just today it was confirmed that Latifi would not have a seat for next year, and Albon is the only driver confirmed. Alfa Romeo only has Bottas confirmed, and Alpine only have Ocon confirmed, as Haas only have Magnussen confirmed as well. Well, if you guys want any more topics to be discussed, like, for instance, I said I was going to discuss the history of Formula One, maybe the history of the F1 engines in specific, so I could cut it up instead of it being one big video, and I'll make a playlist for it. If you guys want to know anything about Formula One, leave a comment. I'll be sure to make a video about it. But this is the end of the video here. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, like the video. If you didn't enjoy the video, tell me why in the comment section. I'll see you guys later. Bye.